All right, so today we're going to talk about someone truly remarkable. Someone who literally turned protest into a party and pain into power. She was a real pioneer, and her legacy of, well, joy and defiance, it continues to inspire people even today. So let's get right into the incredible story of Marsha P. Johnson.
This quote right here, "Pride began as a protest." This simple idea, it's the key. It's the key to understanding not just the history of Pride itself, but also the life of the amazing person right at the heart of it all, Marsha P. Johnson.
So, Section 1, Pride began as protest. And, this isn't just some historical footnote. It's literally the foundation of Marsha's story and the entire Pride movement. So, yeah, let's really dig into what that actually means.
You see, Marsha P. Johnson was so much more than an activist. She really was a symbol of courage, of resilience, and something we call queer joy. The source material puts it perfectly, I think. It says she transformed pain into power and protest into celebration. I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. This wasn't just about fighting back. No, it was this radical, beautiful act of celebrating the right to just exist.
Okay, Section 2, Pay It No Mind. So, who was this incredible person behind the symbol? Let's peel back a few layers, shall we? Let's get to know the real Marsha P. Johnson. So who was Marsha? Well, she was a black transgender woman, a drag performer, born back in 1945 in New Jersey. And at just 17, she packed up and moved to New York City. Can you imagine that as a teenager moving to the big city, just trying to find your place in the world? For Marsha, that place was Greenwich Village. And there she found her community, a vibrant world of drag queens and other queer youth. And you have to remember, this was a time when just being yourself could get you arrested or way worse. But Marsha, she was defiantly, absolutely, unapologetically herself. And yeah, we have to talk about her style. She was famous for her flower crowns and this just radiant smile. But this was so much more than just a look. You have to picture it. In a world that was often so hostile, so gray, her vibrant presence was in itself a radical act of defiance. It was like this visual declaration of joy, a huge splash of color in a world that was actively trying to extinguish her light. This is one of my favorite things about her middle initial, P. When people asked what it stood for, she'd say, "Pay it no mind." How brilliant is that? I mean, that was her go-to response for anyone who dared to question her gender. It's such a simple phrase, right? But man, it holds so much power. It's a complete refusal to be defined or, diminished by what anyone else thinks. All right, Section 3, the Stonewall Uprising. And it was exactly that defiant spirit that put her right at the center of one of the most pivotal moments in modern history. A moment that, and this is no exaggeration, would change everything. So, what was the Stonewall Uprising? Well, back in June of 1969, it was a series of demonstrations that were sparked by a police raid on the Stonewall Inn, which was a gay bar in New York. But here's the thing. Stonewall wasn't just a one-off event. It was the catalyst. It was the spark that lit the fire for the entire modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. This was the moment when a whole community that had been forced into the shadows just decided to push back, loudly, publicly. And who was right there in the thick of it all? Marsha P. Johnson. The sources are really clear on this. She was absolutely one of the leaders of the uprising. Eyewitnesses have said she was one of the very first people to actually stand up to the police that night. Her courage was like the initial spark that ignited the flames of protest that burned for days after. Okay, Section 4, Revolutionaries in Action. Because for Marsha, her work didn't stop when the protests died down. No way. In fact, for her and her collaborators, Stonewall was really just the beginning. So, after Stonewall, she got together with another incredible activist, Sylvia Rivera, and they co-founded an organization. And this is where you really see Marsha's genius as an activist shine. She took all that raw, chaotic energy from the protests and she channeled it. She turned it into something concrete, something that would provide real, tangible help to her community. She wasn't just about tearing down the old systems. She was about building something new to replace them. And that organization was called STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And just look at what it was about. STAR wasn't some abstract, high-minded political group. It was a lifeline, a literal safe haven for homeless, queer, and trans youth, kids who had been completely cast out by society and had absolutely nowhere else to turn. So what did STAR actually provide? Well, the basics, the absolute necessities: housing, food, support. This is what real community care looks like in action. I mean, they were literally pooling their own money, and let's be real, money they probably didn't have a lot of, to provide these things. But it was more than that, right? They created a chosen family. And that's not just charity, that is revolutionary.
Moving on to Section 5, a legacy of joy, because this mission, this combination of care and resistance, it's a legacy that continues to shape the LGBTQ+ movement today in ways that are both really visible and, well, incredibly profound.
When you look at these two powerful symbols, the transgender pride flag and the rainbow flag, you can see Marsha's legacy in both. Her activism really embodies what they stand for. Her fight was for trans-Pacific rights, for self-identity, and for that broader queer unity and visibility. It's a dual legacy, and you can see it reflected right here in these flags.
Okay, let's tackle a really common myth, the idea that pride is just a party. The reality? Well, as the source material reminds us, pride began as a form of resistance to honor the courage of activists like Marsha. So yeah, it's a party, but the party is the protest. The joy, the celebration, all that visibility, it only exists because of the courage and the resistance of people like Marsha. So it's not just a party, it's a political one.
And here's another huge myth we need to bust. The idea that trans people didn't exist before Stonewall. That is just completely false. The reality is that gender-diverse people have always existed, in all cultures, all throughout history. What people like Marsha did, what made her so important, was that her visibility gave that long, often hidden history a louder, proud, and absolutely undeniable voice.
And here we are, more than 50 years later, and her impact is still being felt. This isn't just history, something frozen in a textbook. Her legacy is alive, it's active, it's influencing today's activists and movements right now.
And you can see it everywhere. Her story is taught in schools now, she is celebrated at pride marches all over the world. And there's even a Marsha P. Johnson State Park in New York now, named in her honor. I mean, from education to public spaces, her influence is finally being officially recognized and celebrated. A state park in her name, that's a monumental step. It really cements her place as a major figure in American history.
And that's really the key takeaway, isn't it? Her spirit lives on in every rainbow flag you see, in every chant for equality you hear. Her fight for visibility, for safety, and for the simple freedom to be yourself, well, it continues in every single person who stands up for LGBTQ+ rights today.
Marsha's life is this incredible, powerful reminder that joy can be an act of defiance. Think about it. In a world that so often tries to silence and erase people, just choosing to be visible, choosing to be joyful, choosing to be yourself, that is a protest. So, we'll leave you with this final thought to reflect on from the source material. What does it mean to you, personally, for joy to be an act of defiance?